Right. So picture this. Boxing Day. Most of us are still recovering from too much turkey, dodging relatives we only tolerate once a year. And Sir Keir Starmer is on social media absolutely delighted, practically doing cartwheels because a British-Egyptian democracy activist named Alaa Abd El-Fattah has just touched down in the UK after years locked up in Egypt. Heartwarming stuff, right? Wrong. Because within hours, the internet does what the internet does best. It digs. And what it found has turned this feel-good reunion story into an absolute political car crash of epic proportions. We're talking deleted tweets from over a decade ago calling Britons dogs and monkeys, advocating violence against police, expressing hatred towards white people, and calling for Zionists to be killed. And who's leading the charge with a referral to counter-terrorism police? None other than Nigel Farage. Yes, that Nigel Farage, the man who never misses an opportunity to twist a knife. And now Starmer's scrambling like he's just realized he's left the oven on during a house fire. Buckle up, because this is British politics at its most chaotic, most awkward, and frankly most entertaining. Quick favor, if you're loving this chaos already, smash that subscribe button. Over 94% of you haven't yet. It's free, takes literally 1 second, and it genuinely means a world to us here at British Mirror. Cheers if you did. Right, back to the carnage. So let's rewind a bit and set the stage properly. Alaa Abd El-Fattah isn't just some random bloke. He's been painted as this heroic democracy activist, a dissident who stood up against authoritarianism in Egypt and paid the price. Detained back in September 2019, he was eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison in December 2021 on charges of spreading false news. Now, UN investigators called his imprisonment a breach of international law, and both the previous Tory government and Starmer's Labour government lobbied hard for his release. Egyptian President Abd El-Fattah el-Sisi eventually pardoned him, and Abd El-Fattah flew into the UK earlier this week. Cue the champagne, the family reunions, the government PR machine going into overdrive. Starmer himself couldn't contain his joy, publicly celebrating the return of this British citizen. It was supposed to be a win. A rare moment of cross-party agreement. A nice little story to close out the year. Except, and this is a massive except, someone went digging through Abd El-Fattah's old social media posts. And what they found? Absolute dynamite. Now, these posts are from 2010, which feels like a different geological era in internet terms. But they're horrific. We're talking posts that brand Britons as dogs and monkeys. Posts calling for violence against police. Posts expressing hatred towards white people. And perhaps most explosively, posts calling for Zionists to be killed. They've since been deleted, naturally, but the screenshots? They're everywhere. They've gone viral. And in the world of modern politics, a screenshot is forever. You can't UN ring that bell. You can't scrub that stain away. And now Starmer, who was practically throwing a ticker tape parade for Abd El-Fattah just days ago, is in full damage control mode. Here's where it gets absolutely delicious. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, the man who thrives on moments like this like a vampire thrives on blood, has reported Abd El-Fattah to counter-terrorism police. Yes, you heard that right. Farage has gone straight to the authorities and said, "Have a look at this, will you?" And honestly, from Farage's perspective, this is a political gift wrapped in a bow with a little card that says, "Merry Christmas, Keir." Because what Farage has done is force the government's hand. He's turned what was supposed to be a humanitarian victory into a question of national security, public safety, and whether the Prime Minister has any clue what's going on in his own government. Now let's talk about Starmer's response, or rather, his lack thereof. It's understood, and I love this phrase because it's so beautifully vague, that the Prime Minister was unaware of these statements when he said he was delighted about Abd El-Fattah's arrival. Unaware. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the man with access to intelligence agencies, civil servants, advisors coming out of his ears, was apparently blindsided by a teenager with a Twitter account and too much free time. How does that happen? How does no one in Downing Street think to do a basic social media check before publicly celebrating someone's return? It's not like we're talking about ancient history here. These posts were on X, formerly Twitter, arguably the most public platform on Earth. This isn't some deep dark web forum. This is mainstream social media. And yet, Starmer's team missed it. Always, they saw it and thought, nah, It'll be fine. Spoiler alert, it wasn't fine. The conservatives, naturally, are having an absolute field day with this. They've called for Abd El-Fattah to be stripped of his British citizenship and deported. Now, stripping citizenship is a serious move, one that comes with all sorts of legal complications, but the Tories don't care about the logistics right now. They care about the optics. And the optics are terrible for Starmer. Here's the leader of the Labour Party, the man who campaigned on integrity, on competence, on being the adult in the room after years of conservative chaos, and has just presided over one of the most embarrassing own goals in recent political memory. The Tories are absolutely reveling in it. You can practically hear them popping the champagne in Westminster. But let's not pretend the Tories are innocent bystanders here. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to talk about. The previous Conservative government also lobbied for Abd El-Fattah's release. They were on board with this. They pushed for it. So when they are now screaming for deportation and citizenship stripping, there's a whiff of hypocrisy in the air thick enough to choke on. This was a cross-party effort. Everyone wanted Abd El-Fattah released when he was the imprisoned democracy activist. Nobody did the homework. Nobody checked the receipts. And now that the skeletons have tumbled out of the closet, everyone's scrambling to distance themselves and point fingers. It's classic British politics. When something goes right, everyone takes credit. When it goes wrong, it's suddenly someone else's problem. The Foreign Office has issued a statement, because of course they have. They've said the government condemns Abd El-Fattah's historic tweets and considers them to be abhorrent. Abhorrent. That's a strong word. That's a word you use when you're trying to make it absolutely clear that you do not, under any circumstances, endorse what this person has said. But here's the problem. Words are cheap. Starmer can condemn these posts all day long, but the damage is done. He publicly celebrated this man's arrival. He used his platform to amplify this story. And now he looks either incompetent for not knowing or reckless for not caring. Neither is a good look for Prime Minister. And let's talk about the broader implications here, because this isn't just about one bloke and some offensive tweets from over a decade ago. This is about vetting. This is about due diligence. This is about whether the government has any idea who they are bringing into the country and celebrating. Because if they can miss something this glaring, this public, this easily discoverable, what else are they missing? It raises serious questions about the competence of the civil service, the effectiveness of government processes, and whether anyone in Whitehall is actually doing their job. And in an era where national security is supposedly a top priority, where we're constantly told about the threats we face, where counterterrorism is front and center of public discourse, how on earth does this slip through the cracks? Farage, to his credit, knows exactly what he's doing. He's not just reporting Abd El-Fattah to counterterrorism police because he's genuinely concerned, though he may well be. He's doing it because it's brilliant politics. It puts Starmer on the back foot. It forces Labour to defend the indefensible. It gives Reform UK a stick to beat the government with for months, maybe years. And it feeds into Farage's broader narrative about immigration, about who gets to come into the country, about whether the establishment has lost the plot. Whether you agree with Farage or not, you have to admit, the man knows how to play the game. He's taken a government PR victory and turned it into a full-blown scandal. That's political judo at its finest. Now, Abd El-Fattah himself has been silent since these posts resurfaced. The posts are deleted. There's been no statement, no apology, no explanation. And maybe that's wise. Maybe staying quiet is a smart play when the entire British media is tearing you apart. But silence also leaves a vacuum. And in politics, vacuums get filled with speculation, assumptions, and usually the worst possible interpretation of events. People are asking, does he still hold these views? Was he radicalized at some point? Has he changed? Was this just youthful stupidity, edgy internet trolling that went too far? We don't know. And that uncertainty is dangerous, both for him and for the government that championed his release. There's also the question of what happens next. Farage has reported him to counterterrorism police. Will they investigate? Almost certainly. Will they find anything actionable? That's the million-pound question. Posts from 2010 calling for violence are deeply concerning, but they are also old. There's a statute of limitations on some offenses. There's a question of context, of intent, of whether historical social media posts constitute a current threat. The legal landscape here is murky. But even if no charges are brought, even if the investigation goes nowhere, the political damage is done. Starmer has been humiliated. The government looks incompetent. And Reform UK has another weapon in their arsenal heading into the next election. What's especially galling for Starmer is that this was supposed to be a layup, securing the release of a British citizen unjustly imprisoned abroad. That's the kind of thing that plays well across the political spectrum. It's humanitarian, it's patriotic, it's a government standing up for its people. But instead, it's become a cautionary tale about the dangers of rushing to judgment, of not doing your due diligence, of letting the optics drive the decision-making process. Starmer wanted to win. He needed a win. And instead, he's got a political nightmare that's going to follow him for months. The irony here is almost too perfect. Abd El-Fattah was championed as a democracy activist, someone who stood up for freedom and human rights. But the posts that have resurfaced paint a very different picture. They show someone who expressed violent, hateful views, someone who advocated for the very opposite of the values he was supposedly imprisoned for defending. Now, people can change. Views can evolve. What someone posts at one point in their life doesn't necessarily define them forever. But when you're being celebrated by the Prime Minister, when you're held up as a symbol of resistance against authoritarianism, the bar is higher. The scrutiny is more intense. And right now, Starmer's decision to publicly champion Abd El-Fattah looks less like principled leadership and more like a catastrophic miscalculation. And let's be honest, this is exactly the kind of story that dominates the news cycle for weeks. It's got everything: political drama, controversial social media posts, accusations of incompetence, national security concerns, and Nigel Farage stirring the pot.